What's up guys, welcome to the TB Electric channel where we do how-tos for your Emoto. Today we are installing a Warp 9 stem lock and also showing you why it's needed if you go to a direct mount style stem. So let's get into that. We're gonna open this up first. Okay, let's show you what you get in the package. So this is your actual stem lock. So this is the top cap, this is the bottom, it threads into there. They then include a bunch of miscellaneous spacers depending on the height of your current steer tube and what you cut it to. They also include anti-seize, which you will put on these threads. So let me first explain why you need a stem lock. So the way your bike came from the factory has a standard style stem just like this. This is your top cap. This piece threads into what they call a star nut. So this star nut sits inside here. What this does is it keeps your headset bearings tight. So basically keeps the front of your bike and your fork all clamped together so there's no play and keeps your steering smooth. So how this setup really works is a combination of two things. You clamp down, that's what locks your bearings in. Then you lock these down on the side once those are tight. That is primarily what actually holds it all snug once this is clamped your bearings tight. So what happens is when you go to a direct mount stem, you could continue to use this clamped right here if you added some spacers so that it could clamp, but then guess what? All that's holding all your bearings in place is one bolt on a thing that is wedged into your steer tube. It's not super effective because you lose these that actually are providing a ton of support in keeping that secure. So this whole setup is going to replace that star nut. So what you have to do is when your star nut is in there, we like to use a nice like crowbar, pry bar, or a heavy duty screwdriver, and you just hammer it out. So hammer on top of this, push that star nut all the way out the bottom. You will have to remove your fender to get that star nut to fall out. But you can see it's just an open hole down through there. So the main difference between this one is it actually clamps from the bottom to the top. This threads into here, it goes all the way underneath your fork, and that provides tons more support than just one little screw going into something that's just wedged into your steer tube. So now we're going to show you guys how to install it. So your first step was to remove your standard stem, pound out your star nut. So you should have a totally clear tube that you can look all the way down to the ground. You guys can see that. You'll have removed your fender to be able to get your star nut to fall out the bottom. And now you're going to take this and you're going to figure out how many spacers you need first. So what you're going to do is take as many spacers as you need to make your spacer stack taller than your steer tube. So if we put these on, we're going to go a smaller one here and just use the big ones. So you'll see we have a little bit of a gap there. So that's what you want, a couple mils, 2-3 mils of a gap, because that allows our top clamp to actually clamp, and if there's a little bit of play, it can take that out. If this was all the way like this, it's just going to clamp down on this and not actually wedge anything, if that makes sense. So you'll get your spacers on there. In this case, we didn't use some of our smaller ones because our steer tube isn't super tall. And now we're going to get our top bolt. Now we're going to grab the anti-seize that they include in the kit, and we're going to apply some of this to the threads so that this doesn't bind up. I just kind of squirt it out there. You don't need like it all the way around because as you spin it onto this piece, it's going to just spread it out. So now you're going to reach down underneath and one on top. Just go down like that. Reach this up through. You'll feel it kind of engage, and then you can just thread that in with your hand. You'll see that bottom one's not falling out because it started to thread. Once you have this like somewhat on there but it's still totally loose, we have to loosen some things so we can actually clamp our headset. So we're going to take our 5 mil in this case. You have to loosen all 3 of these bolts on your top triple clamp, one on each side, one in the middle. That's going to allow your fork legs to shift a little bit as we tighten our headset. Now that all 3 of those are loose, we can go ahead and clamp this down. So to do that, it is a T45 Torx bit. This is not a super common bit, so you might have to find one. We have one that mounts on our socket here, and we're gonna go ahead and get that on there. And I like to just hold the bottom and just kind of keep tightening it down. You can see that piece up in there. Keep tightening that down until you're snug. Now this is going to take a little bit of trial and error and practice if you want to get these Warp 9 logos to be straight, top and bottom. Because as you tighten it, you'll see it's going to tighten and tighten, and then usually it starts to twist the whole cap. Oh, In this case it didn't, so that's kind of nice, but I'm gonna have to go and loosen it again if I wanna get those straight. But we found in some cases you have to put like an open end wrench on that bottom to be able to get it tight enough, but sometimes you don't. Like in this case, ours just snugged up. It just clamped, snugged right up nice, and we don't wanna go real tight on this because at the end of the day, we are mashing bearings together. So we wanna go snug, but nothing crazy. So like, I don't know the Newton meters, but you don't wanna clamp this down really, really tight. Once that's on, just check your steering to make sure it's not too tight. If you went too tight on this bolt, it would jam your steering up and it would feel really bad. So that's when you would back it off just a little bit. Ours feels good. I don't really care that this isn't straight. So now we're gonna go ahead and clamp these 3 back down. That's critical, don't forget about doing that. Okay, one last thing. To reinstall your fender, you will see that because this protrudes a little bit out the bottom, just like that, it does make it more difficult. We're using zip ties because this fork doesn't have traditional mounting holes, but you'll see our steer lock, because we had one on here previously, made a mark in our fender. So when you hold it up all the way, your bolts actually have a gap between the bike and the plastic, if that makes sense. You can still run your fender. Sometimes you need to get slightly longer bolts, and I recommend putting some blue Loctite on them, and that's gonna hold your fender on just fine. Warp 9 does make a piece that screws into this that then has the 3-hole mounting point so you can get your fender on there. It does hang down quite a bit lower, and if you're running like a 21-inch front wheel, that will make your tire rub on your fender when it previously didn't. So we recommend just slightly longer screws and some Loctite, and you can hold that on there. We hope you guys found this video helpful. If you enjoyed it, please hit that subscribe button. We have more how-to videos on the way. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next video. See ya.